How's everybody doing tonight?
Excellent yourself.
Great, wonderful, perfect. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be taking the very difficult matching quiz, the only quiz of the semester. So what you want to do is you do have two opportunities to take this. If you don't like the first shot, you can take it again. If you go into week 5 in our course conference, and you'll see it right, I believe, should be towards the front. Let me see here. Should be in week 5. Let me see here. Thought I put it there. Yeah. So it might be easier just to click on modules on the left side. Might be easier to access it that way. If you click on modules on the left side of an eagle and scroll down to week 5 and click on digital photography terms take home. You'll have a button, I believe, in a different place than mine to start the quiz. As soon as you're ready, you can go ahead and begin. It's going to be matching. When you're finished, I always suggest students on matching quizzes take a first swipe and get 100% what you know, and then second swipe, those you were kind of iffy about, and then third swipe, finish them up. Okay? So, any questions? Okay, go ahead and begin. Yep. Do what? Yeah, I'm gonna take it. Yeah, I will take that.
Okay.
Yep. If you have a question on one of the answers that you gave, if it's not quite what the answer is on the results, raise your hand and I'll. If it's close to the answer, because it's case sensitive, I think, on some of these. So if it's close to the answer and it's misspelled or it's uppercase, lowercase, or something that you typed in, then I'll take it and you'll get points for it.
Saying that this is what popped up when I clicked it.
He said he didn't take it.
Oh, you did?
I didn't take it today.
Oh, that's okay. Just go ahead and take the quiz again.
Okay.
I have to reset if I can.
All right.
we got a few still taking the quiz, so if you are finished, you can look in this week's notes for week 5. We're going to be going over both links that are in the week 5 notes.
Sorry, keep it without me. I think I may have accidentally taken a quiz.
That's the one you were supposed to take.
Oh, is it?
Yep, that's it. Yeah, you were good. Yeah, you're fine. Okay, looks like we have about 3 left still taking, finishing up, so no rush. And I am going in and looking at everybody's, especially on that first, I think it was the first one, the misspelling. If you misspelled it or you did a caps instead of a lowercase or lowercase instead of caps, I'm correcting that. Okay, looks like everybody's finished. Don't be too concerned about the quiz. It's only worth 1 point. Okay, so if you got a .75 versus a .85 out of 1, don't concern yourself with that. You'll be fine. It's more just so you can have a familiarity with the terms and you kind of know what they mean if you see them. So that's the whole purpose of it. All right, so we're going to go into week 4. We're going to be talking about exposure tonight. And if you have your camera with you, you can go ahead and get it out and look on your camera for a plus minus symbol somewhere on your camera. It might be on your menu, it might be on your dial itself somewhere, or towards the front of the camera where you push the button to take a picture. You might see a plus minus button somewhere around the vicinity of your camera, hopefully. What that is called is the exposure value. We're going to talk about the exposure value tonight and what that means and how we're going to use it. We're going to have a couple take-homes with, or one take-home with exposure value. So the first document we're going to look at is this one here on exposure value. But before we look at it, we want to see if you find something like this on the overhead on your camera. Did everybody find something like that on your camera? And you might have wondered what that is, what that's used for. You're going to find out this week, and you're going to take home an exercise with this. We're going to talk about it first, what it's all about. Before we get into this, so I do want to mention tomorrow night from 6 to 7 in room 211, we do have the Rockford Cocoa Heads meeting. We do have a local student presenting tomorrow night on, have you guys seen the cell phones that you can go up to like Starbucks? I think Starbucks I know has it, where you can basically just almost, touch your phone on the device. It'll take the money out of your phone. You ever heard of that? She's going to present on that. She works for a company that sells that software. And so it's kind of cool. So she's going to present that. So if you're interested in that, she's going to be presenting just from 6 to 7. We will have pizza there. And you just need to bring something to drink. And hope to have 10 or more show up. Last week, I think we had 7. So if we can get more than that, that'd be great. Cocoa Heads, if you're not familiar with it, it's a club I advise. This is the 2nd year. And it's basically, I'll just read the little fine print here. It usually meets the second Wednesday of each month from 6 to 7. The club's interested for anybody interested in photography, web design, programming, networking, robots, ethical hacking, mobile apps, etc. Each month, a student or guest speaker presents on a topic that the members decide on. We eat pizza, discuss latest geek news. So if any of this interests you, show up to, it says 2:20 in here, but we changed it to 2:11 because 2:20 is a class in there. So all you need to do is bring something to drink, and we bring pizza. All right, and then you guys decide each month who's going to present next month and what topic you're going to present on. Questions on that? Tomorrow night, 2:11. Do what?
This building.
This building, 2:11. Yes, always this building. It is not 2:20, it's 2:11. So if you're on the 2nd floor, just wander around till you see us. If you can't remember the room, it's 2:11 though. All right? So that's tomorrow night. And I will be bringing in my robots tomorrow night too for you guys to play with. I have a couple robots. I let them bring in. I bring in every once in a while and let the students play with the robots that the iOS class gets a chance to program this semester. All right. Well, let's look at the EV explained. This article here talks about EV compensation, or exposure value is what it stands for, the EV stands for. This gentleman says he's been using EV exposure value button on his camera more than any other button, so he thought he would share with us why he uses it. He shoots with a Nikon, so the shutter speed and aperture are controlled with the front and back wheels, not the buttons. He goes on and he says, I'm going to talk what the EV button is about and what it does. To put simply, the EV button allows you to quickly underexpose or darken or overexpose, brighten your image. How it works is pretty simple. When you're taking a photo, the camera's job is to adjust itself by changing the shutter or aperture and to properly expose your shot so it's not too bright or too dark. Some cameras do better than this than others. And we've already talked about this semester. What is it you think about the camera that makes the quality of finding the quality of the image better or not as great? What is it? What part of the camera is it we've learned so far that makes or breaks the quality of an image in a camera? The sensor, right? Not the megapixels, but the sensor. And so, really, what he's saying is, he says basically, talks about some cameras do better than others. That has to do with the sensor in those cameras. Now, when you play with the EV button, what you're doing is telling the camera to either brighten stuff up or darken stuff up to make an optimal exposure. So you can use the EV button in program mode, programmed auto, S or TV mode, and that's shutter priority. A, aperture mode. In P mode, the camera will adjust the EV by changing the shutter speed and aperture. In STV mode, since you set the shutter speed manually, it'll adjust the aperture to compensate. In the A mode, the aperture mode, the camera will change the shutter speed since you manually control it. It says here you cannot use the EV button to under or overexpose your photo in manual mode since you control both the shutter speed and aperture in manual mode. Okay, so that's one of the few things on your camera you can't do in manual mode is the EV button. So let's look at an example. This is pretty good. I think this is a pretty good visual example of what EV does to a photo. And I want to focus on what he's talking about here with just EV specifically. So I'm going to blow this up just a little bit so we can see a little better shot of it. Okay, this first image, I'm not going to focus on shutter speed. I'm going to focus on the EV. Okay, the EV on this image is set to +1. +1, remember that, +1. Looks pretty good, right? Pretty good quality, not bad. There's a nice blur in the background, real prominent, crisp petals on the flower. You can even see the water drops on the flower. The next one, he changes it from +1 to +2. Now let me go back to +1. What do you see difference, without reading what he says, what do you see difference between +1 and +2?
+2 is lighter and it's got a little bit more detail in it.
Okay, yeah, good. And the detail, to me, I don't know about you, looks like it's on these items here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that and some of the lines in the petals.
Right, yeah, you actually see some of the lighter yellow looks like comes out a little bit better maybe than here.
Yeah.
Whereas the oranges come out better here, and the greens even in the background. Here the greens are washed out, the oranges are washed, oranges are washed out, and the yellow is kind of prominent. So it's almost like from 1 to 2, it kind of looks like it almost puts like a real white cast, kind of a real light white cast over the image from a +1 to a +2. Now let's go to the next one, which is a +3. Or take it back, -1, sorry, -1. So let's go from the +2. Is that right? No. Yeah, the first, let me make sure I got this right here. The first one, I'm sorry, was without EV. That's 0. EV0 is the first one. EV1, EV2, positive. -1, -2. So as you get negative, what happens to the image? Significantly darker, right? So you can, the big jump from -1 to +2. Okay, so it's going to take whatever the sensor sees light as, the outside light, and you're going to use EV to compensate because, we've said this already. When you see things, your eyes adjust immediately, right? To this room, to a bright sunlight day, to a shady day, a pitch dark room. Your camera doesn't do that. And so the sensor sees things as it is. Your eyes adjust accordingly to be able to see, and within milliseconds we adjust in every room we walk into. And so EV is good for, it's different than ISO. Remember ISO we used to, I had you do increments of ISO to determine the light value coming into hitting your sensor, faking out your sensor, remember. The EV value is faking out the outside, what's actually going on outside. And so it's a little different, okay, in that respect. Because these are pretty drastic, a lot more drastic than the 100, 200, 300 ISO, okay? When you do a bump from +1 to -1, that's a big bump. You can see drastic differences. And so it's going to basically fake out the outside, whereas ISO fakes out the inside of the sensor. And so here, I'll do it again. We'll start out with the EV0, which is right in the middle, because most of your cameras will have an EV0 if you do it on the menu itself. And then you'll be able to go from like +1, +2, +3. And some of you will be able to go way, into hundreds maybe sometimes in EV, positive and negative. Some of you might be able to only do 0, +1, +2, +3, +4, and that's it. 0, -1 through -4, and that's it. For the take home, you're just going to go through 3, -3 and +3, and that's it within that range. And that's pretty much all you ever will stay in when it goes to EV value. So let's go to the next document. Breaks it down a little bit more on what the term exposure values mean, how light and exposure. Two terms this document talks about is exposure value and light value. They're different. They're interchangeable, but they're different. One is in front of the camera, one is inside the camera. Light value is in front of the camera, okay? Lights, right here, it's in front of what I'm shooting tonight. A light value or an LV value is a measure of the luminance of a scene. Luminance is the amount of light reflecting off a subject. In contrast, illumination is the amount of light falling on a subject. Like for instance, if I was to shine a spotlight on you, okay, versus a China light, a real light, kind of, if you guys get a chance to go to the mall, by the way, in the center area, I don't know if you've been there already and seen this, they have these kind of like puzzle lights. Have you guys seen those? They're pretty cool. They have different variations, different colors, and they're really light, dim light. But I think it'd be awesome for photography, actually, to have. And they're not real expensive, I don't think. And you can put them together as a family, and it's kind of a cool looking light. Are you guys familiar with Chinese lights? The big, kind of like paper, almost, really cheap made. You can get them at IKEA, fairly cheap. It's kind of like that. So that type of light versus like your car light on somebody or a spotlight on somebody is totally different. But that's called the light value. And the next is exposure value, which is inside the camera. The exposure value is the exposure setting of your camera, in particular combination of light value and ISO. Now you're not messing with ISO directly, but it's going to affect it. So you have the light value, ISO, exposure value. Light values are linked to exposure values by the way of ISO, setting the camera. Summary, light values are in front, exposure's inside, but exposure fakes out the outside. It fakes out what's going on in front of the camera. You can't manipulate light in and of itself. You can't, I guess I could turn the bulbs off, right? I could turn the lights off, manipulate it that way. But the only way to manipulate between that and the actual ISO is through EV. It's kind of a little bit easier way and a much more drastic way to get what you're looking for in a shot. Now, like in the photo of the pedals, you can get kind of a more artistic view with EV. And sometimes it looks pretty cool. Like for instance, if you're in a, say in a desert area in midday, and if you take your EV value and you make it more negative, it almost makes the scene kind of look like a negative on an old film. Kind of, it makes it kind of look like that, kind of eerie kind of looking. All right. At nighttime, right before nighttime, at dusk, like say if you're outside in a desert, and you do the opposite and make it like a +2, +3, right when sunset's going down. You can even do that here in Rockford. It'll give it a kind of a bluish tint to that scene, kind of like I don't know if you guys remember E.T. movie where they had the the blue moon and going over the blue moon, kind of like that. And so there are some cool things you can do artistically, and you can play with it this week when you're playing with your EV settings. Because you've already played with ISO a couple weeks, hopefully understand the ranges of that in your camera, what it does. And the next part of EV is where it says camera and subject. So you have the subject you're taking a picture of, right, this week. It could be a person, place, or thing. And that subject is subject to the light value around them. Could be the sun, could be the light in the room, could be any number of things, could be the light. Then in between that is your ISO and exposure value. You played with the ISO, and again, when you play with the ISO, it's not as drastic. You do see differences, for sure, between 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, and so on and so forth. But it's a little bit more smoother. It's not as drastic in your face. EV is in your face, okay, when you change it, when you bump it up just one, from 0 to +1 to +2, +3, +4, so on and so forth. So it's a little bit like, it's not a gradual like ISO is, it's more of a drastic jump, EV is. Now that's why they place EV though where they do on your cameras. If you notice on your cameras, EV for a lot of your cameras is right around the shutter button. Is that not correct? On most of your cameras? Is it right around there close in proximity to where your shutter button is, or where your right hand or thumb hit, somewhere around that area? It should be, because that's the purpose of the EV, is real quickly I can change that right before I take the photo. Okay, that's the whole purpose of it. Yeah.
When I use film all the time, I got all the best shots with 100 ASA.
Yeah.
But I use the EV to fake it out like I was using a faster film.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes,
And
you
so
could.
If I was in moderate light or a fast action, I'd bump it up.
Yeah.
And I got some really good shots.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. You can actually get a lot better shots when it comes to, if you want to like a fake out kind of like a faster shutter speed, you can actually do that with your EV value. And that's something you'll see this week when you're playing with it. A lot of students coming into this class have rarely or never used the EV button at all. You've used ISO maybe before, white balance you've used, stuff like that, scenes on your camera. But EV is one of those things like, I don't know what that really means. And so you'll get to see what that does tonight or this week. And so basically the 0 point in your EV button, the 0 point for light value and exposure was arbitrarily set on the luminance of a dim interior, okay? A dim interior has a light value of 0, okay? And what that really means is, what they're trying to say, wording-wise, is 0 in the camera language is as the light is, okay? Not manipulating it whatsoever. And in fact, making it a little bit dimmer maybe than what it really is, all right? Definitely not brighter, just a little bit dimmer. A dim interior has a light value of 0. At ISO 100, the dim interior has a value of 0. Most of your cameras start out at what number at ISO? Most of yours, like 100, 80 maybe, somewhere around there. And so that's going to be the equivalent of an EV0, 100, which would be the base number for your cameras. And one of the possible exposure settings of f1, the aperture f1 stop at 1 second, would be ISO 100. And so going on down, so if you have a camera value, exposure value of 0, at ISO 100, the equivalent would be light value of 0. All it's saying here is you're not manipulating anything. you're taking a photo as if it just came out of the factory, and you're not manipulating EV, you're not manipulating ISO at all. This light value chart, your cameras might not go to all these exposure values, these EV values, by the way. Like some of yours might not go to -6. And this is just an arbitrary chart. It's not a scientific chart at all. Okay, it just kind of gives you a guide, kind of, for EV values. So say your light value is 18, meaning that the sunny exposure on that one would be like a bright reflection. You'd want a bright reflection kind of photo. +3 would do that. Because you notice when you do a +3, when we looked at the flower, what did it do to that flower the more positive it got? Do you remember? Made it brighter. And the negative added more darkness to it. Let's look at, say, overcast. Overcast, the subject's overcast, and it's got a fairly low light value. -2 sunny exposure would make it look overcast. And so what you're doing basically here is sometimes your camera, if you look through the LCD viewer, in this case, you look at a scene and you're like, wow, the LCD viewer looks darker than it really is. That's where the EV comes in, because then you can bump it up or down accordingly to adjust. All your cameras are going to be different, by the way, because the EV value bounces off your sensor. So however sensitive your sensor is, or how particular your sensor is, or how sensitive your sensor is with EV determines the outcome. So this goes on and all the way down to 21, or yeah, 21. So all I want you to know about this whole page here at the bottom is how to determine exposure is find the light value. And the light value for your cameras, I don't want you to be concerned with, because that can be confusing. But you can see the light in front of you. You can see that. You can see the light in front of you when you're getting ready to take the photo. And all you want to do is, if it's too bright, and I'm at 0 on EV, and it's too bright outside, I think it's too bright for this subject, what do I do with the EV? Do I bump it up or go down? I go down. Go down one slot in your EV. Now for this week's assignment, you'll see I'm going to have you manipulate it kind of like I had you do the ISO. Each setting will be the same, like -1, 0, +1, so you kind of see the range. But in normal settings, when you're taking a photo, you're going to basically look at the light that you have and then begin to manipulate it by using the EV value. So you've got your true light, whatever that is, you got your sensor, here's your EV to make the changes that you want. And it will be a lot more drastic than the ISO you've done thus far. Now it gives an example here of photographing an elephant in bright sunlight. The ISO on your camera is set to 200. From the above light value chart, you find the light value for the subject is a bright 15, and you change accordingly that EV value. And it says here you change it, sunny exposure on that case would be 0 on that one. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. I want you guys to have time to actually finish some of these tonight. You could probably play with these before you leave tonight. In week 5, take-home exercise. We're going to hammer away again one more week on your thumbnails, on creating a contact sheet. Those that I've submitted thus or got so far in, you guys have done a good job on Picasa, submitting your JPEG for your contact sheet. Originally I had this as an in-class, but I'm going to have you guys take this home and do it at home on Picasa because that's what you use all the time. So you're going to create a contact sheet from last week's photos. Once you create the contact sheet of the 30 photos, you're going to circle or put a star or whatever you want to put on there from Picasa to mark that that's the ones that you like. And the one I want you to choose is 5 out of the 30 for the best, has the best ISO setting. Save it as a JPEG when you're done, submit it below. Questions on that?
So we have to
Yep, create, right, from your pictures last week that you submitted.
Only 5 pictures then.
Do what now?
It's only 5 pictures then? Contact sheet or? Yeah, star them. It's the same 30, you just star them.
Star 'em, correct, that's all you gotta do.
So we
Yep.
can't use the same one that we created last week?
Well, if we look at well, that's the ones you submitted to me already, yeah. So if I look at last week's, let me go to last week's assignment. Last week's assignment on the take home, let's look at that.
I had a real problem with that. About getting that program to work.
Uh-oh. Well, that's why I wanted you to do the second week. So you'll get it the second week. And I'm not looking for perfection, by the way, because Picasa is, different than Photoshop, so.
It would load the pictures and it would just end itself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
9 gigabytes of pictures. I was trying to.
Okay, let's see, that was the Picasa one, that was the in class. Let's go to take home.
One of them, I did. Okay.
Okay, so week 4 was last week. Week 4 was last week. You guys had to take 30 photos, 10 photo settings, 30 photos. Each one of the settings had 3 photos, which made 30. That's what I'm talking about. Those week 4 photos, you're going to create a contact sheet of again. And you're going to, this time though, mark them however you want to mark them. I don't care what you want to, if it be a star. I don't think you can do a circle in Picasa. You can do like a star or an animal or whatever you want to do. I don't care. Do what now? Oh, if you have the preview at home, or if you want to come in here, you may do that. I'm just not going to say you have to do it that way. Or if you have a Mac at home, you can do it that way too. Do what now? Well, if you have a Mac at home, you don't have to use Picasa. You can use preview like we've done in here for the in class. But I know not everybody has a Mac at home, so that's why I say use Picasa. Yeah, yeah. I mean, once you start using Picasa every week and you just keep using it, you'll get used to it. I mean, it's different than Photoshop and iPhoto, but it works, and it creates a fairly decent contact sheet. And I have had students figure out some pretty cool downloads for their avatars to put on their pictures. A little kitty or dog or something, or a star or whatever. I don't care. Just have fun with it. But the whole thing is so you can get in the habit of creating a contact sheet. Because remember, the whole purpose of contact sheets is you take your photos from your weekend, whatever. Say you're done with this class, you've taken 100 photos next summer. I want you to be in the habit of immediately creating a backup of those photos, whether you go to Walmart, whether you do it yourself at home and back it up on a DVD, and then immediately create a contact sheet, put it in a DVD case, and archive it. Because SD cards do go bad, okay? They do. Or you step on them or whatever. Or you delete them on accident. I've done that before. And that's not nice when you've been working on something for like 7-8 hours on photography and you delete the whole SD card. That's not good. And so it's good practice for you to do. So questions on that? 30 photos. Same as the photos you did last week, just use those, practice again. Then the take home is going to be on EV, once my website loads here. And let's look at that. Take home for your EV assignment is take 5 photo settings with 3 exposures per setting, so it's going to be ending up with 15 photos. I want you to use for each photo, so you're going to take 3 photos per photo setting, so -1, 0, +1 per photo setting. So if you're taking a picture of, if I'm taking a picture of this monitor, I'm going to do -1, 0, +1, -1, 0, +1, so on and so forth, okay? I'll end up with 15 photos. When you upload them to your photo album this week, all I need you to label them is where you took them at and what the exposure value was. So if it was at the mall -1, mall 0, mall +1. That's it. Questions on that? Okay? Yes? No. Well, on the article, that's why I was wanting to read. I read the article at first. If I go back up there to the how you can do what you can do with EV, let's go over that. You can use the EV button in the P mode, which is programmed auto, S or TV, which is shutter priority, A, aperture. In the P mode, the camera will adjust the EV by changing the shutter speed. In the aperture or STV mode, since you set the shutter speed manually, it will adjust the aperture to compensate. In the A mode, the camera will adjust the shutter speed since it manually controls the aperture. The only mode you cannot use for this exercise is the manual mode. So you can play around with whatever mode you want to use for the EV. You can play around with all, you can play around with either the S mode, the P mode, your TV mode, the aperture mode, okay? And then as far as the ISO, you can manipulate the ISO. Doesn't matter. I don't need to know what that is. All I need to know is what your EV values were and where. Yes.
What's ISO when it says like you got 400, 800, etc.? What is it when it says auto 800? Is it better to use that?
Yeah. Well, technically, I mean, I said you can manipulate the ISO. Technically, I would like you to keep the ISO at auto, if that's okay. If it looks better. If it doesn't look better and you need to do some changes, I would rather you kind of force it with the EV mode this week, even though technically, when you're actually taking photos in the field, you would actually do both. You would adjust the ISO and EV. But it might be a good idea this week to maybe force yourself. You played with the ISO a couple weeks, so you know what it does. Keep the ISO on auto, and then just play with the EV mode. Make sense? And then it should adjust for you. Like, for instance, if you are in the, let's see, the P mode, the program mode, it's going to basically adjust a lot of stuff in the program mode. Specifically, it's going to change the aperture on that. And some of your cameras actually have an ISO mode as well. Some of them don't. But if you take your camera, the best setting, the easiest setting to use EV mode is going to be probably your P mode, or in most of your point and shoots, it's going to be your auto mode. And then you can adjust your EV in auto mode, leaving everything set to auto, and then just play with the EV only. That's going to be the easiest probably. And it's probably going to be the most drastic changes that you'll see in your photos by keeping your camera set to auto and just playing with the EV mode. That way you're focusing this week only on EV. That's probably a good idea. That way you kind of see exactly what EV does to your photos, each one of the settings. And also too, I don't tell you where to take the photos. So kind of pick a variety of places. So if you go to the mall, if you go to the library, if you go to student center, you could even maybe choose a hallway in the classroom in this next week, outside during the day. Just kind of make it kind of a variety of settings, if that's okay. All right? Questions on that, on your take home for EV? Everybody know where your EV setting is? I want to kind of walk around real quick and just have you point out to me that, hey, I know where the EV setting is. And if you don't, then I'll help you. Once we are done with that, we are done tonight. You can hang back if you need any help on anything, but we're done. If you did not sign in up here at the front with your QR, iPad's still up here. So let me come by and see that you know where the EV mode is.
Well, there's that, but I can
Yeah, you got it on the menu, and then it also has the button. Cool, great. Perfect. Good. Yep, perfect. Excellent. Good. Good. Once I've checked yours, you're good to go. So you're probably going to be on. You hit the OK button one time. But you have to be on this code conversation. Do it one time, then you can manipulate it. Good. most of your cameras, you'll have the dial, plus you'll have it on the LCD as
Oh,
oh.
I auto blocked it. Doesn't let me do it.
It might not let you do an auto.
No, my phone is dead.
Your phone is dead. Oh, don't worry about it. No, you're not gonna get counted off or anything for it.
But I have a question.
Yes.
Because I noticed if I'm taking like darker photos, it gets more grainy.
Wouldn't do what now?
How to change it, like they get green when I'm taking darker photos.
When you're taking darker photos, in what setting though? What's the lighting when you're taking those photos? Inside, outside?
Typically, it's inside.
Inside, and what, like in this building or? in
Well,
your-
like when we went down to the basement to do like the first week one.
Yep.
Like I don't know if you noticed when you looked at it, but they were like in the darker spots. It was like more grainy.
Well, down in the basement, they have lighting like this, and this is terrible lighting. And a lot of the lighting for older fluorescent, they're gonna give kind of that green tint. So that's probably what it is.
Well,
you're
it
getting.
was. I don't know. I'll have to take a picture and show you because I've had trouble with it when I'm like just trying to take a picture inside, and it's like the darker areas have like a green look, and it
Yeah.
annoys me.
You know, I think those new, the new twisty bulbs that everybody has to buy now, I think they give off a little green tint too, those
Well,
new
it's
fluorescent.
green.
What is it?
Grainy.
Grainy.
Yeah.
That would actually be not enough light hitting the sensor. So what you might do is you might have to actually use your flash possibly to add more light because when things are grainy, it's generally not enough light hitting the sensor. Yep. Good. Perfect. Okay. Oh, you changed camera? Okay.
Yeah.
You do.
But like we.
Oh, okay. Oh, no, you don't have to return it. That's right. Cool, great, nice camera. You probably have to use like program mode or TV mode
So
on
that's what I
yours.
was wondering. I can't set ISO to auto in program. So I have auto 800, auto 400 kind of thing.
That would work, auto 800. I would use start with auto 800, play with that on your ISO.
I was gonna do that, but. it was-
Oh, were you? Okay. I can let you do that.
Green issue cut.
No.
Let me kill it, restart it.
You came in and said hi.
I guess. I mean.
All right.
There it goes.
Yep.
I like the.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate it.
By the way, the trip was amazing.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Sweet.
The Wi-Fi sucked.
Oh, yeah?
It wouldn't let me do anything except go like search through pages, but it wouldn't
Right.
let me do anything else.
Oh,
So I had to wait to do everything when I got home
yeah,
after a 10-hour vacation.
yeah.
When you
Yeah.
get a chance, can you look at the PHP class? I don't think you put the podcast up. I'm not sure which one to watch.
Okay, for this week?
Yeah.
I will definitely do that. I will definitely do that. Thank you.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Photoshop.
Photoshop, yes.
Is there a best way to toggle between screens?
On Mac?
Yes.
Yeah, you want to do the command tab or alt tab. It's called alt tab, I think. No, command tab. Command tab.
I want
You
to
do like command tab. So you can do it.
Oh, no, what I wanted to do is switch between this picture.
You want to arrange.
And this picture.
Okay, go back up to where you were. You'll see a button that says arrange. Arrange at the very top. Yeah, arrange. Okay, and you can do a whole bunch of different options. So I like to do a tile all vertical. Tile all vertical. Let's try that one.
No, okay. Okay. Yeah,
Let's
I
do
want
side by side. Yeah. They changed that a couple versions back in CS, which is really nice. So you can see everything side by side.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.